Every now and then I'm asked, what order should I watch Clamp's anime in? There are no necessarily right answers, one can just pick whichever anime they like, and start from there. However, I do propose 3 options that I think are better than the rest. One is the chronological order of release. Experience the anime and how they came into the world, just one by one through the years since 1991 all the way up to about 2020. And the second option is the chronological order of timelines. As I've explained in my timeline video and its follow-ups, I believe I have a pretty good lock as to how the timelines work, especially with Holic and Tsubasa, etc. And so one could try to watch the anime in that respective order. That being said, I also have my own personal order, which I originally watched all of the series in. The first one I'll discuss, of course, is the chronological order of release. Beginning back with 1991, 1992, we had RG Vader come out. This was a simple 2 anime OVA, 45 minutes long each. The first episode is a relative, it's not exactly strict, but it's a relative adherence to the manga, while the second episode is unique on its own. Moving along, then next came out was Tokyo Babylon OVAs. Once again, a set of 2 45-minute OVAs that just show some additional adventures of Subaru, Seishio, and Hokuto in the Tokyo Babylon universe. Then there was Tokyo Babylon 1999, a live-action series based on Tokyo Babylon set about 5 years later, or 5 years after the manga series. Then came Double X. It says X squared, but it's pronounced Double X in Japanese. This was more or less just a simple music video to promote the X series. But this DVD also comes with a few slideshows set to music by X Japan. Next that came out were Magic Knight Rayearth and Magic Knight Rayearth 2. I think Magic Knight Rayearth 2 came out a bit later, but as for complete anime seasons/series, I'm keeping them in just one fluid motion. There's no reason to split up the seasons when one is watching. Then came Miyuki-chan in Wonderland. Very short, I believe less than 30 minutes for 2 episodes. Just a little extra short bit that introduces Miyuki, which would be useful to know of for Clamp School Detectives and Tsubasa. And I shall mention back with Magic Knight Rayearth that the series total is 49 episodes, average in length. Then came Cardcaptor Sakura. About 70 episodes over the course of 3 seasons, and of course in the interim you definitely want to watch the movie, which takes place between seasons 1 and 2, and the Seal Card, aka the second movie, which takes place as the finale to the original series. Then came Wish. Wish was about a very short 5-minute or less, just anime short that came in a VHS, although a DVD was released later on as well in the case of a Clampazora, I believe it's called. But at the same time, the subtitled version of this very short episode is on YouTube to watch as of September 2020. Then came Clamp School Detectives, 1996 I believe. Basically a 26 episode anime with about 13 extra shorts. Then comes the Rayearth OVAs, just 3 set OVAs of 45 minutes long each that follows a different plot than the original Magic Knight Rayearth. Magic Knight Rayearth takes place on a faraway land called Sphere, whereas Rayearth takes place on Earth as they're defending from beings that arrived from another world, another planet. I don't like the way with OVAs, I'll just leave it at that. X the movie came out next. Basically, kind of a shorter, but at the same time, a definite spin-off of the X series. We're introduced to a completely new character, Shogo Asagi, who replaces Kakyo, because I don't believe Kakyo was written into the story just yet, but they needed to add a 7th member. It's about an hour and a half. It's a pretty decent movie. Not the best, but it's pretty decent. And I know Turkey Rebel says the prequel to X the movie, but let's be honest, it has almost nothing to do with X the movie. Literally, Subaru and Seishiro take up less than 3 minutes of the movie, whereas they're the main subjects here. It's pretty lame to add that in. Now, this is more of a prequel to X the show. And next that came out in 1999 was a short Clover OVA, about 7 minutes long. It's basically just another music video, kind of like Wish. And as I recall, I think as of September 2020, there was also a subtitled version of this to watch on YouTube. Then came X the series, starting with its OVA and then moving into, I believe it was a 24 episode anime, either 24 or 26, I always get the number mixed up, but I think it's 24. Then came Angelic Layer, a 26 episode anime. Then came Chobits, 24 episodes I believe, however there were 3 recap episodes, as well as one short special at the very end called Chibits instead of Chobits. Then came Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle. This included Season 1, the movie, and also which crossed over with Holic the movie. Season 2, and then quote-unquote Season 3 I call. It was originally meant to be Season 3, but Season 3 got cancelled for being too violent. And the OVAs we get consist of Tokyo Revelations and the Spring Thunder Chronicle. Next comes Holic, which was more or less released alongside Tsubasa, but about 1 year later it started. With Holic Season 1, Holic Season 2, otherwise known as Holic K, the Holic Spring Dream Chronicle, a set of 2 OVAs to complement the Spring Thunder Chronicle, and of course the Ro Ado Yume, also known as Cage Selfish Dream OVAs. 2, I believe, average episode length OVAs that basically round out the series. Then comes Kobato, it's released roughly alongside the rest of the series as well. And then Blood Sea comes out, as well as its anime movie, The Last Dark. After that came the Holic live action series, about 8 episodes in length, beautiful visuals, but in my opinion not the greatest story. Then came Blood Sea The Last Mind, a stage play set as a midquel between Blood Sea and Blood Sea The Last Dark. Then came Asura Girl, a Blood Sea story, a prequel to the Blood Sea anime series. Then came Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card, which I believe will eventually get a Season 2 once this book series is finally finished. Let's all hope. But as it is, I feel it was kind of ended unsatisfactory. And most recently are Blood Club Dolls 1 and 2, a set of midquels between, or at least around the time of Blood Sea The Last Mind. I'm not entirely certain yet, as we don't have English subtitles just yet, but I do have a way to at least watch the first movie. So this is the order if you want to just go along with how, at least Japan has one bit at a time over the years. That being said though, one could also take the route that I take, at least nowadays in rewatching, which is adhering to this timeline. Now of course this timeline is more so for the manga, and it doesn't include the other timelines I have listed before. But at the same time, this is a rough path if one wants to follow the anime in the order of how things happened. So in that sense, we shall move into this, which is first off Clover. It's pretty much just on its own, so I just started off, get it over with. It's decent, but it's 7 minutes. Then we move into the first timeline, which is the X and Clamp School Detectives, etc. type timeline, which there are roughly a couple. Where we start with RG Vader, which is in the distant past. Move to modern day with Tokyo Babylon, Miyuki-chan and Wonderland, Clamp School Detectives. Moving into Tokyo Babylon 1999, and then moving into the X series. Now, of course, at least in terms of manga, these aren't necessarily in the same timelines for various reasons, but at least if one wants to go anime, this is probably a good order to watch them in. Moving into the Angelic Layer Chobits timeline, it's one right after another, so this is a pretty decent way to watch the series, at least if one wants to kind of accompany the manga, that is. There aren't really any significant crossovers, though in Chobits, for a couple instances, perhaps you do see a brief cameo of Ichiro Mihara and Chitose's photo of her and her husband Ichiro. And then, of course, we have the Magic Knight Raya series. Back in the timeline, the Magic Knight Raya series is in its own dimension, but nonetheless, this is where Chloe Reed first finds the original Makona and then clones it in order to make the Mokona we see of Holic. So it's definitely a good point to watch it at this point. And just tossing the Rayoth OVA, I mean, it's just its own story, spin-off. Just throw it in wherever, I suppose. Then you might as well watch Card Captor. Going through that series, as we trace a story of Sakura Kinomoto, we get introduced to Chloe Reed, and we see everything that goes on in the original timeline. And of course, you can trace that through the Clear Card arc now. Then move into Wish. Wish takes place in the altered timeline, and either pretty much before and relatively alongside Holic. And then here's where Kobato is a wild card. The events of the Kobato anime are supposed to take place after the ending of the Holic and Tsubasa manga. But as for the timeline, Kobato technically would occur first. So depending on if one wants to get the references, one could place it after Holic and Tsubasa or before to watch it in technically original order like the manga. And then of course we have Tsubasa and Holic, where I start with Holic Season 1 and watch it alongside Tsubasa Season 1. Then between the seasons between their Seasons 1s and the Seasons 2s, watch the movies that cross over. Then move into Holic Season 2 and watch the live actions. The live action is just an 8-episode retelling of the first 2 seasons. So might as well just get it out of the way in that sense. Then move into Tsubasa Season 2, watch Tsubasa Tokyo Revelations, and then watch Holic Spring Dream Chronicle, which immediately crosses over into the Tsubasa Spring Thunder Chronicle. And then of course finish with the Holic Rose series. Then of course one can just follow along with the Blood Sea series in complete chronological order. However, I do caution that all of the live-action series are non-canon to Clamp's timeline. Fujisaku, who is the Blood director, all of these are canon to his version of the events, but Clamp's version does not take the live actions as canon whatsoever. As for me, personally I watched them in a different order. I started when it first exposed to Holic. Wasn't interested at first, but grew to love it. And then afterwards, I immediately moved into Tsubasa. And so I roughly follow the same pattern of watching things in order. I'm just throwing in the Holic, though, live-action series is here. I watched that way later, but in terms of things, the only reason I watched it way later is because I didn't know it existed until way later. But I mostly started pretty much with Holic and Tsubasa. Mostly because I love these series. They're really great series. Tsubasa has a lot of good crossovers that span the rest. And so I decided, I thought, I want to see how everything else fits together, where everyone came from, where the characters that we see, I mean, Masayoshi, the Kudan, Primera, Shogo, and that's just in the Hanshin Republic. We also got Kunyan, we got Chi, and we got so many other characters as well, so might as well go and start looking around to where they came from. So I chose to go into Magic Knight Rayearth next, because Mokina, gotta love Mokina, and so might as well see where the original idea of Mokina came from, and where Clovereed himself cloned the Mokina from. So I went for the Magic Knight Rayearth series, unfortunately including the OVA. Then I moved into Card Captor because, again, it's the origin, pretty much the idea of Shaoran and Sakura. So might as well go through that series originally, as well as seeing the origin of Clovereed, and then seeing how that relatively ties into his desire of not wanting to be the most powerful magician because he accidentally stalled Yuko's time. It may not be in the anime, but nonetheless, you get a rough idea of the series. And then, of course, Angelic Layer. Gotta love of the Angelic Layer and Chobits series. I love the fighting, I love the comedy in Chobits. And, of course, basically get to see the evolution of Magic Knight Rayearth of Hikaru Shido into the Angel Hikaru, as well as get to be introduced to characters that are seen throughout Tsubasa and even Holic to a degree. I know Shimbo comes from Chobits, and we see him in a brief anime episode of Holic. Hatoko makes it into the manga of Tsubasa. Masaki and Tamayo make it into Kabato. Ichiro makes it into Chobits. So it's a pretty good way to see where all the characters come from. It's a very enjoyable experience to watch those shows. Then moving into Wish and Kobato. Technically Kobato next because you pretty much have to watch Chobits before you watch Kobato. If you want to understand Chitose, Yumi, Hiroyasu Ueda, etc., all the other names and figures that we see in Kobato, you'd want to see where they originally came from Chobits. Even Chitose's twin daughters, Chise and Chiho, based on Elda and Freya. I put Wish in the middle. Again, I didn't know it existed until way later, but I'd still put Wish here, just so one also understands Kohaku a bit, Shuichiro, and just understands all that comes into Kobato, including the Holic Tsubasa references where they show up in their own episodes. Then I moved just basically back to the old school stuff, going through RG Veda to see where Astra and Yasha came from that we see in Tsubasa, Tokyo Babylon, and where we basically see where Subaru, one of the vampire twins, where Seishiro comes from, Shaoran's teacher / enemy. And of course seeing where in the origins of Miyuki, because Miyuki's everywhere in Tsubasa, as well as a few other characters too. Then moving into Clamp School Detectives, absolutely love the series as well, and we see Miyuki play out her roles very well. We don't even know necessarily if she really belongs in that dimension or if she's just passing through, so it's a very nice cameo to see Miyuki in that series. Then I move into the X series. Pretty logical conclusion, follow-up after the Tokyo Babylon series, see how the series go, and especially see how all the crossovers come about with Kamui, Fuma, Karin, Seichiro, etc., all coming into things like Tokyo Revelations. And then, of course, Clover. Clover mostly has some crossovers, though, in the manga, such as No Ai Kanai, but a bit as well as Infinity, etc. Nonetheless, Clover is a nice one to put in near the end, because it's not too essential. And then, of course, I watched Blood Sea relatively last, because it was the latest thing to come out, and it does take place after Holic. That's not disputed. And, of course, Blood Sea: The Last Stoic. Then, of course, I watched the midquel, watched the prequel as they come out and as we get English subtitles. Then, of course, I watched Clear Code, because that's the latest thing that came out. And, of course, it could have various implications for timelines and other things. So, at the very least, this made up the bulk of how I've viewed things thus far, and then Clear Code has come in and so I'm eager to see how they continue to flesh that out. And of course the most recent works of Blood Club Dolls, which I intend to watch sooner or later. Hopefully we get English subtitles for them. I know Blood Club Dolls 2 just came out this year though. But overall, these are the 3 various ways that I believe one can watch Clamp's anime. I hope this helps guide anyone in their venturing through all of the series. But yes, I mostly prefer to watch the originals, then see where everything came from, and start piecing it all together, and then rewatching in order to see the culmination of just the amazing diversity of characters, timelines, plots, genres. It's amazing to see how they all culminate together, and I would definitely recommend this path for the most part for those just starting out.